Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sweet Reality Kenya TV. On Sweet Reality Kenya TV, we delve to entertain and educate. And today we have a one-on-one with Juma Ondeng. Juma Ondeng is advisor culture, office of the CS Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Heritage. Welcome, Juma Ondeng.
Thank you, sir. Good morning.
Long time.
Long time.
Very happy to see
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
Yes.
we have grown
Well,
old together now.
yes. So, ladies
Yeah.
and gentlemen, Sweet Reality Kenya TV is broadcasting from Ethiopia, Somali region. Juma, where are you?
I'm in Nairobi, Kenya.
You are in Nairobi, Kenya.
Yes.
Okay. Briefly introduce yourself as we move on.
Uh, I think the first introduction, and this is very important, it's
Yeah.
good to remind our viewers that uh, between 91 and 92, I was also your student in Rangala Boys Secondary School in western part of Kenya.
Yes.
And from there, I went to University of Nairobi, where I did a Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology. So by profession, I'm an anthropologist, currently specializing in cultural heritage. And my work has been with the National Museums of Kenya, from where I'm on secondment to the Office of the Cabinet Secretary as advisor culture.
Okay. Let's pick from there. So many people have said that worthwhile. They mention anthropology. Can you say something about that?
Now, we need to question the purpose of going to school. For me, I think education is for enlightenment of society. People
Improve
acquire
on
knowledge.
voice. Improve on voice.
Sorry?
Improve on the voice a bit.
Okay. I don't know if I'm audible enough now.
Yes.
Yes. What I'm saying is that we need to question as a society the purpose of going to school. Yeah, and before we even talk about anthropology, because of course that becomes the easiest, some of the easiest causes to attack. But I also want to remind our viewers that when you walk on the Kenyan roads, I'm yet to see any vehicle manufactured by Kenyan engineers. I've not used any phone made by Kenyan telecommunication engineers. And so what we are seeing are technology that is being imported from other developed countries. We are yet to see anything original from our own so-called physical or natural scientists. Now, so what does anthropologists do? We have to remember that for us to understand ourselves as a society, we need to understand human relations. And anthropology being a study of human culture, and that culture doesn't need to be culture of the past. It also gives us a way of understanding our cultures in the contemporary times, but also reflecting on where we have come from. What did our great grandparents do? How did they live? And how are we living now? And then what can we learn from the past that can inform our future? And so it's a very holistic way of understanding human life. Often we are having problem with ethnic tensions in this country, just because policymakers are not making good use of professions like anthropology and sociology to understand our problems and then design how do we go about cementing human relations in a country called Kenya. Because when you live in an artificial entity that was created by the colonial enterprise, we don't have a sense of belonging to the center. But then you need scientific ways of engaging in inter-ethnic relations so that you have a cohesive society which provides for all of us and make all of us have a sense of belonging. And this will also ensure that those discussions we normally have about people saying, "Oh, we need to secede from this creation of the British," it won't come if you're having better understanding of how we should relate with one another.
Yeah, that's true. Now, what essentially are you doing in the Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife, and Heritage?
Uh, my area of interest is culture. So as advisor culture, we are looking at issues to do with policies. What are the policies within the heritage and culture sector that need to be improved on? We are also looking at legislations. So what legislation need to be included in our country so that we have a system moving? And I'll give some of the examples in a little while. But we are also looking at projects that can make culture be integral part of our national development. Because often, just as you said, that people question the relevance of courses like anthropology, they don't always look at culture as a main ingredient to our socioeconomic development. So I'll give a few examples. One of the things that Kenya has been lagging behind, for example, is ratification of UNESCO conventions. So you have one of the long-standing convention of 1954 of the what we call the Hague Convention, which looks at protection of cultural heritage during in events of armed conflict. Now, so this is something that has been pending because the convention came into being in 1954, long before Kenya became independent state. And we have not ratified it almost 60 years after development, after independence. And currently, the process is on course for that to be ratified. Now, we have other conventions, such as the 1970 UNESCO Convention that prevents transfer of illicit cultural property, and which will be a very critical component in Kenya's quest to have objects that left during colonial times to be returned to the rightful communities back here at home. So even as we engage in the debates around restitution, it becomes very difficult for communities, for example, to engage in these conversations when we don't have legal instruments that can help us in these processes. The other convention that we're talking about is 2001 Underwater Archaeology Convention, which will also be very critical in protecting our underwater cultural heritage. Now, when it comes to legislation, culture is a devolved function. And therefore, one of the undertaking currently, which is ongoing, is to have a designed culture bill, which will define the relationship between the national government and the county governments, and what their respective roles will be going forward as part of recognizing that counties have the primacy of taking care of culture in our country. Now, we have institutions like the National Museums of Kenya, and the current law, Museums and Heritage Act of 2006, is not fitting within the current constitutional dispensation. So that law is also undergoing review so that the law is also in tandem with the constitution. Other institutions that are also being looked at in terms of improving their legislation is Kenya National Archives and Documentation Act, and we also have the Heroes Act, which created the Heroes Council, and these are also coming in. They are being implemented because Heroes Act is a very recent legislation. It is in conformity with the current constitution, but it needs to be operationalized beyond the national government and also include the county government in administration of heroes and heroines' welfare.
Okay, that's good. Okay.
Yes, I'll talk about a very specific project, which will also be of interest to people not only in Kenya but also across Africa. National Museums of Kenya, through Indigenous Knowledge Documentation and Digitization Project, is taking cognizant of the indigenous knowledge we have in this country. And that particular project, which is under the ministry, is documenting indigenous knowledge across the country. So currently they are working on about 13 counties to document this knowledge. But it's not just documenting for the sake of it, but they're documenting with a view of creating a database and later on improving on this knowledge through value addition, and that will make sure that communities have their knowledge as part of a very well coordinated economic improvement in our country.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are tuned to Sweet Reality Kenya TV. I'm your presenter, Otieno Isaiah. And today, as you have heard, I'm meeting one-on-one Juma Ondeng. You stopped using your name, George?
Now, George is still in my documents, but you see, as a cultural person, I understand how that name came to be. So I'm not so enthusiastic about it. It's in my identification document, but given a choice, I'll always go for my two names.
Mm-hmm. Good. Now, Juma, you've talked about culture and making sure that we embrace our culture. Recently, I saw something in Dubai, a place where we have lions and every other thing put as if it is a wild, as if it is let's say an animal orphanage in Dubai. Hopefully, these things have come from Kenya or somewhere. What would you say about that vis-a-vis what you are championing?
I think it's a good development. You know, human imagination is one of the things that is so elastic. We can imagine things beyond our own reality. And it's a challenge also for us because we have this animal in the natural wilderness. And here comes Dubai, a desert, basically a desert country. But they are looking at ways through which they can diversify their touristic products. And that's such a wake-up call to African countries that rely on traditional the traditional product they market, sand beaches, wild animals. So we need to ask ourselves, what can we do differently? Because you see, as you can see, Dubai is now imagining themselves and they're going to attract those people who want to, the lovers of nature, who will want to go there because they feel it is safe environment to have their visitation. And not only that, they go there and they don't only see those animals, they also the desert tourism, they also have other things that they are offering. So what can we do which is differently? You know, and this is where now cultural heritage comes in place. We need to look at our heritage as a resource, of course, both the natural and cultural, but we also need to invest more resources in packaging this and deliver it to the world so that people know what really we have as a country. Often we have a lot of resources that we can market out there, but as long as we are not packaging it and delivering it to the intended consumers, they will never know that we have other resources that they can come and take part in. We have younger generation that may not be interested in those kind of animal, what we call the safaris, but they will be interested in visiting places like Kitmikai and learning the narratives behind Kitmikai, going to places like Thimli, Chohinga, doing a lot of water sports in Lake Victoria, because you see, Dubai cannot come and take Lake Victoria. They cannot come and carry away Kitmikai. They cannot come and go to Crying Stones. They cannot take away Mount Kenya. And all these resources that we have that are uniquely ours, there's a way we can package them and make them part of something that is uniquely us. And you know, we are also endowed with a lot of historical monuments, paleontological sites. And these are things that are uniquely us. No one can come here and take Fort Jesus away, for example. So it's about how do we strategize so that as the other people now think of themselves having wild animals, animal orphanages in their countries, what are we doing? What can we do differently? And I'm very happy to report that one of the things the current administration is doing is that there's a lot of enthusiasm around cultural heritage, and there's also a lot of shift in terms of diversification of our tourism products, so that we go for new products, new niches, and create new markets, so that other people who visit places to enjoy such experiences will come here and also get them from Kenya.
Okay. Now, recently I saw on your Facebook page some lamentation on one of our cultural ambassadors, Agan Odero Agan. Uh, how are you working together to harness whatever we know so that whatever is become to the rest is the truth?
Uh, Oderagan is a man I respect so highly, and I respect his opinion. He's a cultural guru and one of the brains that I do respect. I think we have not created a very structured way of engagement, but that's the area we are going into because often we have very distorted version of our history, distorted version of our cultural knowledge that is being perpetuated to look like reality. But we don't need to perpetuate the same. I think a society that grows must question its body of knowledge. So if my grandfather told me something as a little boy, when I grow up, I need also to challenge that so that whatever information I'm now going to give to my children and the wider society should be based on certain truths and facts that can be supported. And when I brought in Ms. Agan into that conversation, uh, I managed to see something on YouTube. An elder who was being interviewed in Kisumu Museum. I could recognize the background because that's where I've worked for some time. And one of the stories he was telling was about creating this the connection between the Luos and the Jewish community, which I did find to be very absurd. And history is there to teach us about our past. So I picked on some of the journals that were written around 1898 and early 20th century, 1902 and 1903, about the Luo community. And the colonial administrator, Charles Hobley, went to Luoland, and as they were establishing the colonial enterprise, they were also interested in the stories of origin. So he spoke to a number of respected clan elders at that particular time, including Gor Kogalo, son of Kanyamwa, the one behind the popular club Gor Mahia. And in his discussion with these gentlemen, whether they were in Sakwa, whether they were in Kisumu, whether they were in South Nyanza, none of them created any close relationship between the Luos and these other communities. So I keep on wondering, at what point did we start these narratives of connection with the Israelis and connection with Egypt? Now, if this story about our connection to the Egypt and Israel are true, then, and our building, the supposedly taking part in building of pyramids, why didn't we have pyramids in Western Kenya? Because any knowledge that you have, you can only improve on it. And I'm sure in Egypt, people are wearing a very different kind of clothes from what we saw from the colonial photography when we were basically surviving on very thin pieces of leather and such like things. People improve on the technology they have. So even if you migrate from one polity to another, you will have better technology. Now, Egypt had a system of writing, hieroglyphics. Now, if we were in that particular environment and we learned how to read, we should also have developed our own indigenous way of reading and writing. But these are things that were taught to us afresh from colonial system, which forced us to do those kind of things. But also from that history, we learn also about our past environment. So those are kind of the stories we need to use reference material that can be supported by facts, so that I don't bring in my own biases because of cultural pride. Because cultural pride can make us claim anything. We can claim we built Egyptian pyramids, we crossed the Nile, we crossed Red Sea. In fact, someone will even say one of us was the one with Moses when they were crossing Red Sea. But those are very untruthful things in the quest for cultural, the ethnic glory.
In my sojourn in several countries, like in Ethiopia, I've met they are called what? The Gambela. The Gambelas are the Luos of Ethiopia, and we share quite a lot in terms of our language. What we call witch, the head, they also
Yes.
call it.
Mhm.
And then when we go to Kaluru, the Kadola
Mhm.
over there, we have a lot of closeness. And
Yes.
even in Sudan, we have some other laws,
Mm.
such kind of engagements. Is the ministry trying to do something about that other than going so far to Jews and to the Jews and all those other people? Not just on the Lugos, but the Bantus and all that. Are you
No,
doing anything?
yeah, I think for now there's nothing that's being done, but I think this is something. This is a very important question for us, because you see these colonial boundaries that we inherited and now make them. We are so loyal to them. They only remind us that our communities are spread across this region. And this is now the role of where county government should be taking key prominence. I would like to see cultural festivals being organized by our county governments. For example, it would be good to have a cultural festival in Gotramogi in Siaya, and that county government should invite Luos from Tanzania. They should invite the Luos from any community that is related with the Luos. The Jurluo in southern Sudan, the Alurus, the Padolas, the Acholis. There are some also in Democratic Republic of Congo and Central African Republic. We need to create those cultural connections through our county governments. And if you look at what is happening among the Ateso community, for example, they have this cultural festival they have every 26th of December. And the king of the Ateso community, he graces that occasion in Kenya. And they recognize that the Ateso community is one, even though they have the political colonial boundaries separating them. But as a community, they are one. So we need to find a way of accommodating and also celebrating our similarities and also our diversities. Because in terms of language, the word Joluo, when you talk to them, they recognize that Joluo are Kenyans, but the broader word is called Luo. And among
Yeah.
Luo, you have the Joluo, we have Japadola, we have Acholi, we have Langi, we have Aluru, we have the Joruluo from southern Sudan and other affiliated communities based in Sudan, which is considered as the ancestral place from where the Luos moved migrating southwards.
Made by the law of Poland. Law.
Yeah.
Some people claim that as well.
Yeah, you know these things. People find ways with words, and also some words also mean something in other localities. Because normally, if you try typing LUO, things pop up from China. So it just means
Yeah.
that some of these things they cut across boundaries, and you find similar words meaning totally different things. But at times, some words also mean the same thing because there's, I think, in Scandinavia, the word "ole," which is used there, also mean the same thing like "ole" in Masai land.
Okay.
Yeah, it just
Laguna.
son of.
Yeah, son of.
Yes.
Okay, okay, okay. Now, modern culture. You talked about anthropology being okay, talking about modern culture as well. What would you say about LBT? Is it LBTQ?
LBTGQ, whatever it is.
Yes.
Uh, I
What does
think
it put for our culture?
now uh, we need to have a cultural identity uh, that is specific to us. I know culture borrows, culture tend to invent, culture tend also to expand, uh, but there's something that happened in Africa. We need to decolonize our minds. We should not just accept foreign ideologies just because they look cool in elsewhere. Each country should be given opportunity to develop within its own cultural prescription. Now, I don't know which culture within any African continent, whether in the past or in the present, that accommodated such group of people. And therefore, we need strong cultural education, even in our schools, because they're usually the breeding grounds where people experiment with these ideologies. And they are not good for us because, for example,
Borrow from our Luo culture. If
Yeah, we can
you
borrow from our Luo culture because you see, even
if
those people who go,
maybe you acted like a lady, you are lady sort of, you will receive thorough beatings.
yeah, you receive thorough beating, and you even had a particular name, Nyalhana. Because and
Oh,
when you are called Nyalhana, it was not a very good thing in those parts of Uganda where I grew up in. So they did not just entertain it. And the reason is this: our cultures, our population also need to grow. The moment we start accepting some of these things, they attack the very core part of our growth as a community. Because even those people who go out to recruit men to start marrying men or women to start marrying women, what then happens? They are going to be extinct within a very short time because if no more people are going to give birth, then what will happen? And we cannot have a society where others don't want to be part of that procreation, but they want others to procreate for them to pollute. That will be very, very, very wrong. And I
beautiful.
like, yeah, I know this. Some of these things usually have implications in terms of when you're applying for visas and etc and etc. But it's also just good for society to allow our divergent views from theirs. That we need to have a cultural identity and we need to develop within our own cultural prescription. None of our African cultures, I'm yet to come across any that allowed some of these things as we see them now. And so they are not popular culture. They are things that are being forced, foreign ideologies that are being forced on us. But we just need also to be very honest and talk about it instead of being nice about it and saying that, okay, it depends with personal choices.
Your advice to the students who are picking subjects and courses and have been told that some courses are inferior. What is your parting shot to them?
There are no inferior courses. For me, I usually say what is important is the thing you enjoy doing. Uh, when I went to university to do anthropology, I think one of the professors, who was a friend of my father, said that I've picked anthropology, and what I will do all my life is to stay in forest, digging for old people's bones, because that was his understanding of what anthropology is. So my father was really he insisted on me changing that course to do something else. But because I had passion for this, at that time, for me, what was interesting was that one of the areas that we were being told anthropologists will work in mostly was in development, non-governmental organization, working with understanding communities. Because for you to succeed in anything, you need to have passion in it.
Yeah.
And so I grew passion for the course I was doing. And I remember even when I took up a long break from education and then I was going back, everyone said, why don't you go and do education? And I said, no, I'm going to do anthropology because for me, it's about acquiring knowledge. When you acquire knowledge, and the students should insist on reading their books. I know we are in a society that there's a lot of cut and paste. And cut and paste is a culture that breeds laziness. So you have graduates who have no idea of knowledge within their own profession because all they did was to cut and paste from internet sources. And our universities have failed to put in anti-plagiarism softwares that can help students go back to reading and writing from their own original sources and doing the right citations. So if you are passionate about a profession, go for it, no matter the kind of discouragement you'll get. Because I would rather do anthropology and enjoy what I'm doing than being in a profession that doesn't add value to me and I'm doing it just because of money. Money is not everything. Uh, Job satisfaction comes even in places where people don't get a lot of money, but they feel that they're adding value to society. So we need to question what are the needs of our society, and each one of us should find a role they can play to meet those needs, because that is the only way we can develop as a country.
Okay. As an alumni of Ranala Boys High School, what would you tell them in 30 seconds?
Rangala is amazing school. You can become whatever you want to become. All that matters is persistence, determination, and focus.
Talk to Kenyans about what you feel about the culture and what they should do to help you champion whatever you are doing now?
We need to be proud of our cultural identities. They don't need to divide us. We need to create understanding that we cannot all be the same. If you take your hand as an example, all the five fingers are not the same size, but they are the strength of your hand. Therefore, while we celebrate our diversity, the diverse cultures that we have, we also need to be very proud of ourselves as Kenyans. And we need to understand that through culture, we can make our country rich.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Juma Ondeng. Thank you, Juma Ondeng.
You know,
Yes.
once you are a teacher,
Yes.
uh, you are a teacher, and you are the only one who is allowed to make. You can call me whatever name you want. You know, I was on my way out, eh? But the moment you told me we can do this,
Yes.
I told my wife I'm going back to do this because that is my teacher.
Okay, so you are in the house right now.
Yeah, I came back to the house. We were living with her. Then I came back to the house.
Okay.
Yes.
That is good, Juma Ondeng. Thank you so much for talking to Sweet Reality Kenya TV. Viewers, this is Sweet Reality Kenya TV, broadcasting live from Ethiopia and Nairobi. I am your presenter, Otieno Isaiah. Till next time, thank you so much and bye-bye.
Bye
Bye.
bye. Bye.